Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you very much for tuning back in again. This is the second half of the primary doc analysis for Unit 7, Lesson 3. In this particular part of the lesson or screencast, we're going to be reading the docs together and answering the questions together as well. So please make sure that you follow along here and get ready to type in the answers that correspond to each primary doc. Let's go ahead and get started with Document A Sakoku Edict of 1635. Here's what it says. Japanese ships are strictly forbidden to leave for foreign countries. No Japanese is permitted to go abroad. If there is anyone who attempts to do so secretly, he must be executed. If there is any place where the teachings of Padres or Christianity is practiced, the 2U must order a thorough investigation. If there are any southern barbarians or Westerners who propagate the teachings of Padres or otherwise commit crimes, they may be incarcerated in prison. All incoming ships must be carefully searched for the followers of Padres. All foreigners are excluded from the trade with Japanese, except for the Chinese and the Dutch, who may trade only at Nagasaki. Let's consider these questions and then answer them accordingly. How did the Sakoku Edict of 1635 create a closed country policy for Japan? Why do you think the shogun Tokugawa Era created this policy? How would this change Japan economically, and how would this change Japan socially? Well, upon looking at this document and in giving it further analysis, I think we could probably say a few basic things here. The closed country policy set forth by Japan did not allow Japanese people to leave for foreign countries, and therefore excluded foreigners from trading with Japan, except for the Chinese and the Dutch, who were limited only to Nagasaki ports. You might remember learning about this from our notes too. For number 2, after Spain's conquest of the Philippines, some Japanese military leaders started to doubt the intentions of Christian missionaries in Japan, and traders too, who had already been interacting with the Japanese. Some daimyo had converted to Christianity, while others distrusted the Europeans' powerful military weapons. So this influenced the shogun to eventually attempt to control all foreign interactions. Number 3, how would this change Japan economically? This would change Japan's economy by effectively eliminating foreign trade for most of the economy. This takes away foreign markets from Japanese industries. It also cuts Japan off from technological innovations, especially militarily speaking, which will hurt them in the future. This isolationist policy would continue to thrive until 1854, over 200 years later. And then, how would this change Japan socially? Well, anti-Christian Inquisitions began in Japan, including the Fumi ceremony. To reveal any individual still loyal to the Christian faith, a picture resembling that of Jesus or Mary was placed on the floor of a pagoda, and everyone was required to step on it. If any hesitation was visible or any reluctance was detected, that individual was automatically suspect and subject to investigation. Pretty interesting when you think about it. Let's move on to the next primary doc and the next set of analysis questions. Number 2, for letter B. Document B, System of Senkin Koto. All daimyo were obliged to spend several months each year at the shogun's court in Edo, former name of Tokyo. Leaving their wives and children behind, this meant that the daimyo had to spend large amounts of money and time traveling to and from Edo. Movement around the country was controlled with barriers on the main routes at which travelers would be stopped to have their travel permits examined. The Tokugawa proved to be very effective, and Japan enjoyed a long spell of peace. This left a dilemma for the samurai. The job of a warrior is to fight, and without a war, the samurai needed something to do. Let's consider these questions. Describe how the Senkin Kotal system affected the daimyo. How might the shogun benefit from this system? How might the emperor benefit from this system? Well, here we go. In regards to the second set of questions here, basically the Senkin Kotai system that affected the daimyo did so in a way that cost them money to travel and made them more removed from the families and community that they sought to serve. So as a result, many felt a closer connection and reliance to the shogun than their community's needs, which is what the shogun had wanted. How might the shogun benefit from the system? Well, open to various student responses here. The shogun benefited because he could keep an eye on all the daimyo and see if any were plotting anything against him. It also made them more financially dependent upon him as well. How might the emperor benefit from this system? Well, open to various students' responses too. The emperor benefited because all of his daimyo would be in one place for a time and he could connect with them. It also allowed them to go back and communicate with their communities about the emperor and his wishes for the land. So there you go. Let's move on to the last primary doc that you're required to read and outline. Primary document, letter C. Peaceful pursuits. Although a samurai acquired skills in the art of war, in times of peace he was to cultivate more peaceful pursuits. They also took on responsibility for governing and became part of the bureaucracy. Though Bushido naturally involves the qualities of strength and forcefulness, to have this one side developed is to be nothing but a rustic, simple samurai of no great account. And that's from Budo Soshininso, the 17th century. Over the centuries, many samurai became accomplished poets. The samurai class as a whole was expected to act moral, honest, and spiritual examples of the nation. Now, during Pax Tokugawa, the image of the samurai changed from that of a noble warrior to that of a character in a kabuki play, to be cheered or laughed at by theater goers from the despised merchant class. This is one of the best-known samurai roles, and that the title of the role play, Shiburaku. Extravagant makeup, costumes, and swords were used. So, what does this mean in regards to the questions? Let's go ahead and jump back down here. So the samurai under the Tokugawa peace took on a responsibility of governing through civil means rather than through military force, like you might be most familiar with from our notes from before. Many samurai became accomplished poets, they were cultured, and the samurai class as a whole was expected to act moral and honest and spiritual examples for the nation. So in a sense, they had more dignity and clout. How would you feel if you were a samurai living under the Tokugawa rule? Well, open to many possible student responses, but during a changing Japan, chances are your role as a samurai would change too. Of course, with there being no wars or military battles, this might alter your role in society in a big, big way. I believe those are the only two questions you have to answer for that document. And so there you go. My hope is that you guys found this to be incredibly helpful for you in your reading and understanding of the primary docs. Please message me directly if you have any further questions or like any further assistance on any part of the lesson. Thank you very much for tuning in.